Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of Just One Thing. In today's session, we have none other than Martin Rooney as our guest. Martin really needs no introduction, the founder of Training for Warriors, which at its peak, I understand, had over 500 locations across 30-odd countries, an internationally recognized trainer, speaker, author, and culture coach. He is really one of the few individuals that I know, the most energized individual I personally know of, that genuinely built something from scratch by chasing what he loves. So Martin, welcome, a big, big welcome. And Tom, thank you again for being here. So let's just dive right in.
Well, Martin, I'm going to start this, and everybody knows that if you and I just start talking, this could go on for days. But it's all about you, dude. So here, you know what? I want to go down a path with you, Martin. You have such a strong visual. People know you. They know a little bit about your history, Olympic level athlete. They know your martial arts history, but I think there's stuff that's really important, especially back in the old days, that we need to, there's things I'd like for you to talk about that people don't know you about. So the first thing is, and you and I were laughing before I met you when I think you were 12 years old. It feels like, yeah, you were that clean cut, buzz cut PT guy working with Bill Parisi back in the day. And I'm like, oh my God, were you like 25, 27 years old back then? But the thing that struck me back then was that you were already a visionary. You were already starting to see things that other people had not yet seen. And the one that really I thought you were ahead of your time on was just the application of sports performance to children, where I remember going through with you guys when you had that thing really rocking. There'd be groups of 12 out there with, be like five, six coaches running groups of these kids. And it's like, nobody was doing that. So tell me about that, man. Where did that start? Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, hey, for everybody listening that doesn't know me, hopefully you'll get this history today. But yeah, it's true. Tom and I met originally, and we were talking about this beforehand. I was 27 years old, single guy, and I was a physical therapist. I had been a collegiate track and field athlete, had been on the U.S. bobsled team. And I knew, though, when I was a therapist, and this is very important for everybody to hear first, I enjoyed therapy, but I knew there was something bigger. There was something in my gut telling me I either could make a bigger impact or I really wasn't doing what I loved. And I started going back then. This is the mid to later 90s. There is no internet really. There's no, stuff is still on VHS. To get a book, it was really difficult. And I just started finding courses or things that I could go to. So I was spending my weekends, I was spending my money on things I loved. And all week long, I was suffering doing something I didn't love. And on one of those courses, I was flying to Tyler, Texas. Back then, it was called SAQ, Speed, Agility, and Quickness. And sitting next to me is this guy that I had met way longer before, because we're both track guys, named Bill Parisi. And I'll tell you what, his energy, was infectious. And by the end of that trip, we ended up we weren't even supposed to be there together. We ended up rooming together. We become best friends immediately. And by the end of that, I went home. I told my folks I'm quitting therapy and I'm moving into the basement of this guy that I had met through season jet tickets I had. And I was going to be on this adventure. I wanted to somehow be involved with sports and training. And like you said, I saw that this was going to be something. It was, kind of like find a need, fill a need. Sports were big, but no one was training for it and nobody believed in it. And that was my start. And that was the platform that eventually, like you said, I was always looking for, well, what could be either the next thing or what is something else that really interests me? But I think the biggest part of the story is most people, unfortunately, spend their time doing something they don't love to do. They spend their time doing something everybody said they should do, or, oh, it's a good job. And I'll tell you what, the best thing I ever did was chase my passions and try to really become great in those areas, and the world will find you. And man, I will be honest, I have not worked a day since. And when stuff did become really like work again and I didn't like it, I shifted again. I'm not going to say pivot. I hate that word, but I would shift more in the direction towards my passion. And that's kind of led me the 25 years since you met me. And I'll tell you what.
Let's go back there for a minute. We got to go back there for a minute. You're skipping stuff. You're skipping the cool stuff. So you and Parisi were like Jobs and Wozniak. You know, you were mad scientists sitting in the garage. You know, that's and Bill could talk anybody into anything in those days. Anybody into anything. I can't believe how he was able to spread that passion. But dude, the kids, you're ahead of the time with kids. You were ahead of your time with training martial arts. The only guy even possibly comparable then was Pavel, who had started back with the martial arts about the same time period, and he was like 12 years old, you know. And then there was 4 or 5 things that came out of that early days with you, man. Go to those things.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the story.
Yeah, well, the kids stuff. I think what we did, and hey, for anybody listening, if you call your business sports performance, or you have a turf in your facility, or you even do kid training, combine training, MMA training, whatever you want to call it, the birthplace of that, and again, the genesis was as a result of Bill Parisi and the platform he created. And he really did. He created a platform for me, and he let me run because I kept proving myself to him. But we had an amazing team of people. It was just this unique time. We had this team of great guys. Everybody was passionate. And it was almost like every day we were learning something new. But it's interesting because the stuff we were building, now I just see it replicated, you know, all over. And it doesn't mean that that's bad. It's just we were on this exciting cutting edge where, man, I was getting up early, staying up late, reading everything I could get my hands on. But it moved not just from the performance aspect, but it was the business aspect, the marketing aspect, stuff people will never see. That we were doing mailers to 20,000 people and designing those. I was designing ads that would go in the newspaper to try to drive people in. It was just this exciting, incredible time. But we were also working our tails off. Like you said, we were doing nonstop sessions all day long, building this stuff, cashing out at night. And man, and then remember too, hey, there was the franchise aspect and how that spread and how it grew across the country. And these were all incredible experiences. But again,
most guys don't know that you were in the mainstream health club business, that you were actually kind of Bill's general manager for a while. So you kind of came out of, when he had the clubs, you were kind of running. That was so weird, dude.
I think
you were running the training, you were running the clubs, you were for a couple of years there, you were it.
Again, though, all stuff goes to Bill, where this was just this opportunity to learn about all different areas, you know. And I think, man, like anything else, you rise to the level of what you're able to do or your incompetence. So it was all there. And we just kept growing it. But again, it all goes back to Bill, that if he's not there, the visionary, and remember the other stuff people don't see that, you know, and you were there, Bill was never afraid to always bring people in and get better. And probably Bill's greatest strength, I say, is his ability to see something in somebody as well as take risks. And man, what I always say is what differs between, I guess, Bill and myself, where I wish I had a little more of what he has, is, man, he is not afraid to take big risks. And because he did that, it always gave me the confidence to stay by him and go. But yeah, he took incredible risks, and just GC in that, you know, the multi-million-dollar facilities and the stuff that he did, it's almost unreal, you know, that people will have no idea. Cause, you know, he's now, you know, he's the speed guy again. He's got a new book coming out. We talk all the time, and I couldn't be more excited, but no one will ever see this stuff, the real stuff behind the scenes, and the stress that he was under. It was, you know about it, but man, you know, for the stuff that he did and for our industry, someday there better be a big award for him.
Hey, well, take all that history,
yep.
take all this stuff that you guys were so right about in those days, and project it ahead, man. Tell me where. I'm looking at sports performance now. It's almost like when you guys kind of took off, it was really peaking. There was velocity. They tried to get in the game, and those units, Paul Prather, those units were so big, and they stumbled. And then it's almost like you guys were 20 years too early with that. But now it seems like it's it's back. It's almost like it just started today. It's really hard to describe it, but it was, people don't understand in the 90s how right you guys were with sports performance, but it's kind of got lost and now it's back. So what's your take on that? What's the future of sports performance going to be?
I would say, having been in it the whole time, because, still I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina now, and we have a pre-season of training for Warriors in the facility here in Charlotte. And so I can't say it ever went away, but what I would say is I think there was a time when what you're almost describing is everybody tried to go a little too big, right? Like, so yes. Whether you want to use the velocities of the world, they did, they had the dog and pony show. They sold a lot of these giant facilities, but there wasn't really a business model that accurately worked behind it. So it didn't mean that sports performance wasn't valuable and couldn't be a business. But I think what we discovered is it should be connected to other businesses or revenue streams, as well as, man, you don't need to do the gigantic facilities. So sports performance, if you look around, it exists on fields, it's out in the parks, it's in small places, dedicated spaces inside of facilities. And I don't think that went away. But what I would say is it went so big, so fast, and people were throwing money at it, that I think it had to establish itself as, what it is and what it can generate in the industry.
I think it got tarnished a little. So another weird question, and I won't use the word pivot, but another weird question. You're all over the world, man. You travel as much and probably more than most anybody does. So I'm looking at the training. It in some ways some of that's almost stagnant. It's reinventing itself again.
Yeah.
So if you could put your visionary hat back on, give us like a 10-year look of where training's going for not just athletes, but for adults, for children. Where's the path of training? How do you see this progressing? You got trainers coming in now, they're 26 years old, they're overly credentialed, they're underexperienced, and they're all, every business card they have is master trainer on it. The guy's got 18 months of experience. But there's a whole generation of people that think they're there, but then training is almost like it's struggling a little. It's like it needs to be reinvented. What's your vision of the next 10 years, man? Where's this all going?
Well, that's a great question. And here's, I guess, what I would say, even taking a step back there, because you talked about the trainers and the coaches. I think, maybe we talk about, hey, where not to go. And hey, through my experience and what I've seen, having helped so many people in the industry and seen so many businesses, I think maybe the most important thing for anybody listening that they can ask themselves, and this is important, is, do you really want to own a business? Or are you, I used that word with Bill before. Bill is an entrepreneur. Bill should own businesses. Bill should be involved in businesses. Whereas most people I meet shouldn't. And unfortunately, if we look at the life cycle of trainers, if you will, or coaches in this business, they work at a gym, whether it's a big box or somebody else's vision. They move up the chain. They're there long enough until they start saying, hey, I'm making all this money for this guy. I need to do it myself. They try to take some people with them, scrape some money together from their uncle or some, wealthy client that they have. And then they dig in, and then they realize they're not a great leader. They realize they don't really understand business. And then they use this word, I'm grinding, right? I'm grinding. And then they grind for a few years, and then eventually they disappear, and they either become a cop or a teacher or a fireman. And for how many times I saw that happen in this industry, it's unfortunate, because the real thing that person should have been doing was working in a great business, coaching, helping people, and they probably maybe would have made more, right? And so ultimately, I'm challenging the people to listen before you worry where the industry is going. Where do you really want to go? Because I think what we created in our industry was, if you didn't own a business or have your own logos or some name with extreme on it, you're not real. And that's not true, right? Like it's really, hey, first off, we've got to level out where we should be. But I definitely think, man, especially in particular with COVID, there's going to be a lot of opportunity or space available. And that could be dangerous if people are jumping into it and they don't know what they really want to do. But I think the smaller boutique spaces can and will continue to be incredibly successful. But as I'm presenting on now, but that means you've got to have more better services, better relationships, and you can have a great business. But in order to sustain that over the long term, you got to continue to do the work. And unfortunately, a lot of times people don't want to do that. And again, I got a lot of ideas, but here's another one is this business, and I'll give this very frankly for everybody, this business is a tough business, but this is a business you have to work. This is not a business where you take pictures with your feet up in the sand and you think you have a gym and it runs by itself. As soon as you try to aspire to something like that, that's the minute it's probably going to be quickly going away. So I do believe the future is, hey, it's somebody that's super passionate. They've got a handful of team behind them that will eventually cycle through and go away. And you got to be a good leader with that. But if you still have the vision to help people, whether it's kids, adults, whatever, man, there will always be a market for that. But you got to deliver an incredible service. And you and I have talked about these things before too, like as the boutique space, if you will, entered in, it's, I would say some of them are probably very challenged by COVID right now. If they had big spaces and commercial spots and they've been shut down, but when the world reopens back up, there's going to be a need for that, no doubt.
Yeah. We lost 30% of all the gyms in the country last year. Everybody looks at the big chains as getting devastated, which they were. But you drive through most neighborhoods and you see an empty bar studio, an empty yoga studio, empty martial art, little trainer guy. But what you said there was very powerful, Mark. I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he's been in business for a while. He's got about right around 5,500 square feet. He's in California. And I was like, I spent the whole hour on his consulting call trying to talk him out of the gym. It's like, no, man, you need a clubhouse. You need like 1,200 feet. You need to train clients and go home because you can't manage. You're not a good manager. He didn't want to learn marketing. He hired a bunch of people. He's one of the nicest guys, and he's a good coach. He really does the right thing, but he's not a commercial business guy. Sometimes the answer is no. An old thing that we used to talk about, the 20-60-20 rule. 20%, if I look at 100 trainer gyms, 20 of them are exceptional gyms. They're the top of the class. Bill, it would be Frank Nash, guys like that just kill it. The middle, they buy themselves jobs. They're really nice people, but they make 60 grand a year and they're thrilled. And the bottom 20%, as you guys found out when you first did the franchise, was they shouldn't get out of their mama's basement ever. They should be sitting down there smoking pot and eating brownies and hiding because these guys cannot run a gym. So no, that was very good.
Don't sugarcoat it for us, Tom. But ultimately, for everybody listening, we're doing everybody a favor. It's really, you're asking the bigger questions. So that guy you talked about with the 5 places. Well, why do you want 5 places? Because then is it ego you're fueling? Like, oh, wow, now I have 5 places. Or wouldn't it be better to have one really successful one that like everybody loved? And I think that is, but there are people that do need to do more and can super succeed, but it goes back to who that person is. And again, understanding the real why. And because to be honest, and why I say all these things for everybody listening is not to identify, oh, this person shouldn't do it. I'm saying this because every time a gym goes out of business or a person loses their passion, there's somebody they can't help. And still at the base of like what I do, whether it was get a kid faster, whether it was help somebody lose 100 pounds, that we can never lose sight that that's the big reward at the end. And if you do it right, you're going to make money too, but never lose sight of, why you're doing it. And maybe it also takes having a few jobs you hate first to get into it. So somebody that only gets into fitness probably says, oh, fitness sucks. Whereas I had a lot of jobs I didn't like first. So I'll never forget, like, man, I got the coolest job in the world.
Remember, a weird story. Remember that Italian restaurant that Bill, when I used to come and visit you guys, he used to take us to?
Yeah.
And we'd sit in there and have a few beers and eat really too much food. And I remember yelling at Bill that night just because he wore my ass out that day. He probably threw 30 ideas on the table. And then, of course,
30, you're being kind. He knows that. It had to be 100.
You were on fire that night. It's like, okay, we can do this. I'm like, guys, just pick one. What the hell do you guys want? Just pick one, just one. We can't do all 30 of these things. And Bill was wound up there. We had notes all over the table. We're drinking some beers. And it's just, Bill was like, yeah, and he was just, I was like, dude, you're going to kill me here, man. But it's a guy like him can sort through that. Your point is very valid. Most people can't. Yeah. They can't sort through that map. They don't know what they want. If I had to say there's one thing important, and I think that's what separated your career, I think that's what you've done so brilliantly is, and I look at a lot of other coaches, they don't know what they want. They don't know what they're trying to get done. There is no expected outcome. And I think you've done that well. You have managed to shift when you needed to shift. The term I wanted you to talk about is reinvention. Yeah. Talk about that term, man, because you've done that as well. And a lot of guys we know, I mean, you're obviously you're close friends with all the gurus and Boyle and Gray and Lee and all these guys, but there's all these guys seem to have a path where they get down a certain run and then they're willing to reinvent themselves and they're willing to change. And the guys that don't, how many of those guys with the old VHSs that made those tapes are all gone, and all those gurus that failed because they clung to one thing. Yeah. Your reinvention, Martin, has been a pretty beautiful thing to watch. Talk about that a little. Tell the generation about reinvention.
It's funny you say that, because I don't think I ever intentionally said, hey, it's time to reinvent myself or change. Like I said, I was always chasing my passion. So for instance, the kid in sports performance, it was just such a passion. I was just so into it. And there were even fragments within that. There was a period of time I was the barefoot guy before barefoot was cool. I was the breathing guy before breathing was cool. Obviously the speed guy, the youth training guy. And then don't forget the NFL Combine guy, where we had such a successful program. And again, without a doubt, to the relationships that Bill could create, the facilities that we had. But what I would say is then we were labeled there for a while, whether it was the 40-yard dash guy and even within that, whether it was deceleration, all these different concepts that we were exploring and hey, putting out there so everybody could benefit from it. And then again, I think one of the biggies was whether you want to say the MMA guy or the Training for Warriors guy, where I was training fighters when no one else was doing it, when the sport was still banned. That's where the books came from that led to the courses that led to, another entire area. But then even within that, what I started to notice was all the training that got created was actually very useful and worked for all these people that weren't fighters. And then it became that anybody could be a warrior. And then as that continued, I started coaching all my coaches. And I realized the importance of a coach, which that led me down the coaching hole where everybody will say, hey, that Martin Rooney, he's this coach that, coach me. And then now where I'm really exploring, because I want to help all these businesses survive, and everybody heard it today, is I've really realized, hey, once you're coaching, once you've got your passion, once that's in place, you got to create an environment. You've got to create a chemistry. You've got to create and ultimately the word was culture. And that led to the latest book. And I'll tell you what, Tom, if you haven't read it, it is a business. I consider it my masterpiece, where it's business, it's coaching, it's all of it together. And it's what people need, because you can have money, you can have a business, you can have people working for you and create a lousy business with a lousy culture and go out of business. And so I never said, hey, I'm going to reinvent. It's almost, hey, here's where I am. And then that is the stuff that you start putting out there. But for everybody listening, for the last 7 years, I've been the middle school and high school track coach in town. So I'm still using all of the stuff that I learned. And I'm going to corner the UFC next week with the guy that has the most fights in UFC history. So those don't in particular go away. It's just, I guess, who are you, or, what are you exploring right then too? But yeah, and remember, we're talking a 23-year span right there too. So,
well, that takes me to the question. The big one is let's say you're a man of a certain age now, you've crossed the hard barrier.
Yeah. The half century.
So how's this story end? What's the next generation? Everybody's got to have an escape plan. Everybody's got to have what's next. You've got to be, everybody that turns 50 has that thought. Everybody sits down, like staring at a glass of wine, going, what the hell am I going to do with the rest of my life? You've had that talk with yourself. Everybody does. Yeah. So tell me what's the next version. Yeah, I mean, you're going to move past Warrior. You're going to where, excuse me, where next? What are you going to do next?
Well, I guess here's an interesting thing for everybody to listen to, because I haven't said it yet, but I have 4 daughters. So when I met Tom, I had no kids. I have 4 daughters. So I have one that just turned 9. So I still have little kids.
You said that like that's my fault. I met Tom. I
met Tom. And he made me get married for my image. But what I'm trying to say, which is really important, and this is pretty neat, Tom, is you remember when we were driving it, I was going in super early, coming home really late. And I can remember when I had my first kid, and now the kid's getting to be about 1, my wife said, hey, you can't do hours like this anymore. Something has to happen. And what's interesting is, hey, Bill was great, but it was like, hey, then you've got to figure out other ways to build this without you having to be here all the time, maybe get home a few days a week or something. And that's where the DVDs came from, so it's kind of interesting that my skill sets or the things that we developed were oftentimes based off how could I not only take care of my family, but be with my family. And why I'm saying that is, one, I'm thankful for them because it forced me to become more either efficient or effective so I could be with them. But at the same time too, man, so my oldest just started at Notre Dame. Guys, you don't want to know what that bill is. You do not want to know what that bill is. So right now, when you say, hey, am I done or am I out? No way. I'm man, I need the world to open back up because I need to do more speaking again. So really, what do I love? I love the rush of being up on stage. I think that's where I'm at my best. And that's where I could get people excited to then be part or want to be part of my organization and Training for Warriors. And for the last 2 years, really my ability to have done that has been really limited. So it has hurt, man. It has hurt the pocketbook, the wallet. It's hurt me spiritually where I'm not out there doing what I love. But definitely, I also would say this, everybody that I've ever watched that was really passionate about what they did, and then whether you use the word retired or stopped doing that, they kind of fell apart really quick. So I am in no rush not to do what I love. It's just, I'm going to continue to hone my life that I only do what I love, right? So I don't want to spend, so I consider the successful person the one that spends all their time doing the stuff they love with the people they love. And then you're a success, no matter how much money you got in the bank. And, but ultimately, I guess what I'm saying in a roundabout way is, hey, I still need to generate money because I got the next 17 years. 17 years, I'm going to have a kid in college straight for the next 17 because of how we spaced them out. And Training for Warriors is this most important thing to me, where every day I'm hearing from these people that it's helping somewhere in the world. So it really it's been incredible. And I never had a vision for what it is now, for what it would be. But like we were talking offline, the last couple of years have just been so challenging, where we just had so many people mandatorily shut down for so long that something that took me 20 years to kind of grow, to see it be so threatened or damaged, that was also very, very stressful time, and still is, right? Because it still exists. So I don't see myself ever not being a part of that, as well as not, look at, yourself, hey, I think of you when I see you and you're up on stage and you're still rocking it 20 something years later. That's what I envision I would want to do. Cause that's what I like doing, I miss it. That's what it showed me is, man, not to ever have anywhere to go or people to fire up was, it really did. It was a great revealer of what was important to me. But at the same time, I got to spend a lot of time with my family, and it reminded me of that too. But yeah, so I don't have any vision of, I'm not involved. What I would have the vision of is I would love, again, like I said, to be somebody that could really come in and help people that are starting businesses, but, people that, help them create the vision from the 20 something years of what I did, so they don't make the same mistakes that we made. And and really have a rush with that, so. But yeah, so I have no visions for anybody listening. Martin Rooney is not a guy that sits on a beach or lays around reading all day. Like I would lose my mind and have no purpose. And I think that I would fill that space with bad stuff or something. So I am gonna. So I want the world to open back up and get back to doing the stuff I love doing.
Right. Well, Sumit, I warned you that between Martin and I, that getting a word in is almost,
which is fine, which works absolutely fine.
I'm sorry, man. Go.
No, I've been taking copious notes. I've been enjoying the interactions. I've been getting a lot of insight. So I wanted to jump now in, Martin, and like you said, there are two big things I want to talk about. First, let's go back to the Bill area where he had those 30 ideas that you were talking about, Tom. And you too, Martin, you have such a rich background and you were doing things, you're making an impact. And now you're like, I want to pick one of these paths. How did you guys decide which path to pick? It's like, there's this saying, you have to drown some puppies. And that's a very terrible thing to say, but you have to drown some puppies. How did you pick and choose? Like what was going on in your head to say, because all seems good, all seems great ideas, and you're all passionate about it. So help me and the audience to say, these are some strings you can pull on to say, let's go down this path versus the other.
Yeah. Well, I'll preface it with this, and, Bill knows this, and Tom knows this too. What made he and me, I don't know how to, what made us such a great team was, he was such a visionary. But man, we had this open, honest dialogue where we could argue. Tom saw it, like it'd be knockdown, drag out fights, but we were always friends at the end. But there was also this level of trust. Like I just trusted him so much on, because of his passion and where he wanted to go and what it wanted it to be and our relationship. But at the same time, he trusted me because he knew, you build up enough track record of having success with the things that you do, you go for it. And, like I said, we were doing big projects but that's how I would describe it. What made our team so great. And again, it wasn't just me. We had other great people involved too, but he would throw it out there and then it would be like, man, let's nail one of these down and go for it. And I think a part of it, I wish I could say, systematically we know, but I think it was gut and instinct. And we did a lot. That's how we operated left and right, where I think sometimes I either, whether you want to say I have a good touch with reality or I just have a good ability to see like this is going to work or this is not. And, and Tom was always there in those meetings, right? Like, and there would be some that, man, they sounded like great ideas, but when you flesh them out, man, that's probably not going to work. Whereas, hey, here's an idea that we can implement and let's give it a shot. And when we would find those, they would happen, but they would have never happened if Bill wasn't crazy enough, in some ways to say all these things that might sound so crazy, but then they do work. And think about it. What's crazier than a guy starting with a van, and then to a facility and when no one was doing it and he didn't have the money and then a bigger place and a bit like, man, he's the ultimate with the track record of, making things that probably couldn't have happened happen. So, but that was how it was, it was a team, hear ideas. That was a part too. We had a lot of meetings. Tom knows that. Like that was another thing, man. We were not afraid to have meetings, knock down, drag out stuff, but we were always moving forward. And like I said, looking back, it was this incredible, exciting time because we weren't just building the framework of our business, but now what you see that exists today, it's just so funny. Like you said, you'll see all these people producing stuff on the internet or whatever else. And we were doing that a long time ago. There's not a lot of
25 years ago, yeah, 25 years ago, some of that stuff.
Yeah. And did you guys taste success right out the gate? Or was there a period of like, you had to be very resilient and keep on powering through things and like, no, we've discussed this. We fleshed out the ideas. It will work because in theory it worked. And these spreadsheets that you were making, it was working or you just tasted success right away. So it did not, it just validated it and you did not have to go through that struggle period, if you will.
No, I would say no, because, hey, there were as many ideas that worked. There were many that went by the wayside. Tom knows that. Like I think the secret, Sumit, was we were not afraid to try things, right? Like, hey, can this warm up be different? What about this speed drill? Here's a new piece of equipment. Here's some new technology. Hey, let's try to market this way. Hey, wait a minute. We need a website. Let's go. And we would just learn how to build websites. Wait, we need VHS tapes. Let's go. Hey, we need DVDs. Let's go. Hey, it was just moving and shaking. We need manuals. We need to replicate things. Like, we had no fear taking on new stuff and diving in. But when I look back, there were a lot of things that either didn't work or went away, but we didn't sit there and lament over it. We just kept moving, So and I think that's what.
I got to interject on that, Martin. That Sumit, he's being almost too modest on that. That even when they were wrong, they moved it ahead. It still was. They were more wrong than a lot of guys were right. That even their mistakes moved it ahead. I remember one day, Martin, I was down there. I spent a lot of time with you guys for a number of years down there. I was down there on a Saturday morning, and they had the speed school rocking, and there was some special event. Martin, there had to have been over 200 kids out there that day, and you had some pro athletes out there. Martin's got everybody organized, and I'm like, this is a freak show. This is but there was nothing like it in the country at that time. I was, and even in those days, was still, traveling all over the world. There was nothing like that. And so even if these guys made mistakes, which I think is a great lesson, Martin, even when you guys were wrong, it moved it ahead.
Yeah.
It actually got it. They didn't screw up much. There wasn't anything in there that was life-threatening, but it's like, okay, we tried that, but that would be forgotten in like 20 minutes as they moved on to 30 other things on the wall. There was an incredible energy about that. That's why I like the Steves and Wozniak kind of analogy, because somebody's got to take the mad science and turn it into reality. And that was Martin's gift, that he could get stuff done. He could, okay, it's crazy. Okay, Bill, just go away. I can do this. And then Martin would create magic with some of this stuff. It was really something to see. So you have to have both players like that to create something magical. And I think that was really Martin's gift at the time. But that was a magical era. I look back on that. I mean, they're just, that's one of those golden periods in your life. You look and you're just like, you guys just, everything was for a long run. You guys had a long run together.
Yeah. So for everybody listening too, it was, 14 years, so 14 years. And there was, and Bill will attest to this, man. Like he drives you. There weren't like days off or times we weren't thinking about it or going. It was always going. But it was the rush, and that was the excitement, it was, like I said, it was the greatest lessons and education. And in particular, again, I think people have to hear this part, that when I look back now, the training is like, see, people think the training's the whole thing. The training is a very, now as I see it, a smaller piece where you got to understand how to manage people. You got to understand business. You got to understand sales. You got to understand marketing. And man, I feel those 14 years, as much as I learned about speed or whatever else, I feel like I should have got 3 MBAs, in the same, being honest, in the same time. And I think that was the greatest strength too. So for anybody listening, man, you want to own a fitness, never forget, you're not owning an exercise program. You're owning a fitness business. And holy cow, like Tom, think about it, Tom, that was everything, all your books, everything else that man, unless you're well-versed in all those areas, you're going to be challenged.
True. Talking about challenge, which was the other thing that was crossing my mind, Martin, when, you talked about the last 2 years being so brutal on you from all aspects, right? It takes away what you love to do best, be on stage, rallying people. And then, like you said, it hurts the financial side of it big time as well. So here you are, you're used to a certain lifestyle, things have been going well. And then COVID is, of course, everyone's been impacted. But how are you coping with these setbacks and these challenges, like you said, on your own accord? Like, what are you doing? What is Martin Rooney's recipe of grappling with change and grappling with setbacks? What are you doing? And
and hey, I wouldn't sugarcoat it. It's not just change and setbacks. It's been fear, anxiety. It's been the scariest time, because remember, from now we're coming up on 2 years. When this was all going down, it was like, what's going to happen? Where is this going to go? Is it all going to go away? And where I coped, and here's a great line. And I think this is maybe the biggest thing I got from this is, if you're having problems, go find somebody to help that has more problems than you. So what I kept doing was I kept burying myself into everybody else that was having even bigger, everybody's challenges were huge. And I tried my greatest. So one thing that was really neat is, in my organization, for 65 straight weeks, I would do an hour webinar just like this, just for them, with where we were at, where things are, confront the brutal facts, but give strategies, ideas, anything that could help us to succeed. I was on the phone with just so many of them all the time, helping negotiate leases and with landlord, whatever it was, however I could help to help them sustain. And as Tom knows, and it wasn't like I was, making real, a lot of money there to do that, but it was just to protect what I had helped create. And really, what I would say is the thing I think I'm most proud of over the last 2 years has been what it taught me about leadership and the responsibility that goes along with that. But also, again, I looked at the silver linings. I got to spend a lot more time with my kids. In particular, I got to invest in my oldest, and now she's gone to college, and I savor that we spent so much time together. And what did I do? Again, guys, I wrote 2 books that got published with one of the biggest publishing houses and has sold tens of thousands of copies. And so again, maybe it's that old line, like, control what you can control. So if I couldn't speak, then I can write, right? And if I can write, why not write my masterpiece? And man, there were a lot of days, it was those 4 to 6 hour days just digging in and writing, because I just didn't have anything else to do. As Tom mentioned, man, I was one of those 150 days a year on the road guys. I didn't realize that. I never added them up. But when all of a sudden you got all that time on your hands and can't leave your house, it was, so I turned it into creative energies, but also energies to help others. And I think that was, but I will say, like, definitely, hey, financially and everything else, like it's been crushing for that. Cause that was a lot of really the only places I made my money were the things that were, kind of taken away. So that forced us to have a lot of deep, hard conversations. You talked about lifestyle and how you live and preparing for the kids for college. These were all real, like, serious, deep conversations that we had to have and plan for the future. Right. So it's, so I'd love to say it's been all fun and games, but it definitely hasn't.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. So protecting business, showing up, controlling what you can. How do you still fill your cup, Martin? Like, it's still not over, right? It's still there. People are still hurting. I'm sure you're hurting. You've got the masterpiece out now. It's there. Yes, it channelizes the energy away to put it there. But is there anything else that you're doing from probably coping would have been last year, but now, how are you filling your cup? How were you filling your cup?
And Tom's known me for a long time. Like, hey, I'm a training still maniac. Like, I train every day. And where I have the luxury too, is that my children like to train too. So I do get to spend some quality time with them on that. But maybe one thing I haven't mentioned too is like, my most proud possession is my library. And, so I write books, but I read thousands before. Well, so I'm at about 2,000 books. So I can almost say now, in the last 25 years. So, man, not only do I read, but in particular, these last 2 years, I've read like 250 books in the last 2 years. And I mean, I've just improved how I read, my comprehension, how I invest to pick the book that I pick. So I am a nerd at heart. My wife calls it OCD. But I am always working through the works of others to see how to get better, or, and how to improve. So I am always trying to move myself forward as well. And definitely I'll say, physically I feel great, but I know I can't do the things that I used to do. And, and you kind of deal with that stuff too. But I just love training. I love studying. And it's almost like I'm addicted to somehow moving forward every day. And if I haven't either learned something new or challenged myself, I'm not happy, so it's, so that's a little insight there too, for everybody listening. Like, guys, I'm not a watch Netflix guy and, and lay around with a couple of bottles of wine. And I know a lot of people like that. And that's just, that again too is never going to be me. But this has helped me. At least I got to refocus on myself, I could say a little bit, but definitely it's this weird thing. I feel like what I would say the weirdest thing I deal with, maybe this will resonate with somebody. It's almost like guilt. Like I've been so busy, Tom and Sumit, for so long and just so driven that like, I don't know how to shut that off. And when, all of a sudden I didn't have somewhere to go or somewhere to exactly be, that was maybe really, that was a big challenge for me. But then I turned it into the writing, the reading, and just trying to continue to grow. And that kept me going. But yeah, like, I think that was the biggest thing is it's like, I felt like I just didn't have what now? What do I do? Cause we've just been driving for so long. It's hard.
Totally understandable.
The virus scene, it's like the biggest reset, slap upside the head. I wrote an article about it, just calling it, it's like the biggest slap upside the head because it was a correction and it forces you either grow or you fade.
Yeah.
And that was what you just said there was really good, Martin. It's just, when you chose to get slapped upside the head, it just grew. And a lot of guys, there are a lot of people last year that were so angry, they just shut down. They just kind of lost everything. Being angry, it's something you cannot change, just doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
So,
we saw a lot of that. Like, I think one of the weirdest things during this, and this is something important too, is I really believed, just having deep conversations with myself, that people were going to remember what it was you did during this. And man, I get it. People have their political views, or their views on different things, or their anger. But so many people were just so vocal with it and polarizing that, like you said, like it goes back to that thing. Like I always say, how I tap into things or just knowing what works and what doesn't. I'll say this, I know that's not going to help move things forward.
So I'm going to give you a whole quick list here. Biggest mistake you've ever made.
Biggest mistake ever made. Not understanding who was managing my money. And, I thought I knew what I was doing in the stock market, and I thought my person did too, and they didn't. So really not understanding money like I should understand money. Probably the biggest mistake I ever made.
Oh, that was a long time ago. So one book, you're tossed out of an airplane. You're sitting on that proverbial desert island. You got one book.
The one that I started with that got me going first was called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. So I'll go with that. Dan Millman. That was a classic.
Good. Let's see. One thing on your drop dead list, you got to get done before you're 60. The one big thing. Everybody's got a bucket list, especially when they turn 50. So one big bucket list thing.
Yeah. My biggest bucket list thing that's still on there, and I even have this stuff written down, but I see now that I don't know if it's real. I wanted to have a New York Times bestseller, but now I understand that sometimes that is, regardless of what you sell or who you are, it's still up to them. It's very subjective, not objective. So, but that is one, I don't know, just for me, or even if it said national bestseller or something. And again, that's an ego thing talking, but I would, I'd really love that one. And I'd probably, I definitely want to go throughout South America, in particular Machu Picchu. So that'd be two. I want to stand up there.
Oh, okay. Don't say any names here, but the dumbest ass gym owner you ever worked with, what was their biggest mistake? And keep in mind, we only have another hour.
I think, biggest mistake I think is burying a lot of money in it and thinking that's going to make it work, where this is a people business. And if you don't like people, you probably shouldn't be in it. So, that I would say is definitely that I saw that over and over again. that it was like people wanted to throw money at problems versus throw conversations at them.
And the last one, biggest success, dude. What's the biggest win? If you had to celebrate one win, what would that be?
For myself?
Yeah.
Well, the biggest one right now, again, hey, my kid is on the track team at Notre Dame. And man, and it's because that's so fresh. It's just incredible. But what I always say is, hey, there's something to be said for I trained all these NFL guys and MMA guys and helped all these people. But when you can do it in your own home too, and you still have a good relationship with that kid, I think that's a biggie. And I actually really couldn't be more proud of that kid. And every day I wake up happy because she's having just like the time of her life.
That's awesome.
Okay, Martin, you've had one of the best careers I've seen, and I've been in this industry 45 years. You have
not over, Tom. You're saying it like it's over.
Oh no! That slap up the head. My reality is going a different way, but you've had one of the best runs, man. I admire your career. You don't like the term reinvention, but you've managed to keep moving forward. You've adapted your stuff. Congratulations, my friend. You've had an amazing run, and you've got a lot to be proud of. It was fun getting you on today. When Sumit said, "Who do you want?" I said, "Let's get Martin." And he goes, "I hardly know him." And I said, "Don't worry, he can talk. Yeah. He'll be fine."
Hey, well, I appreciate it, and not only that, but shout out to you too, because you have always been, and we didn't get to talk about that today. But yes, for everybody listening, it's not like Tom and I, we met 20 something years ago. I almost measure it, Tom, that we were always, it was like you were this checkpoint, whether it was every 6 months of those last 23 years. And, we would always sit down and I would say where I'm at and you would give me advice. And so many of those things have stuck with me, as well as just watching you up on stage and watching your stuff change. And hey, I read your posts and just seeing what you're doing. And there's just always this wisdom because you're further down the road than me that, hey, I always appreciate that too. And, it's easy for you to give out the kudos like that, but man, you were in this game when I was an infant and you're still going. So, it was, again, it's just been like I said today, to almost another checkpoint to say, holy cow, I still think I'm that 27-year-old kid, and yeah, I'm not. But we're all still here, which is really cool.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm the luckiest one. I've got the legend and the myth together here. So I'm learning from both. And, you talk about the New York best time sellers. I've been reading your book, Martin. It's an amazing book. I haven't finished it, but it just holds you.
Yeah.
And you want to go. And
Tom, I got to get it to you if you don't have it, because
I'll get it to Tom. That's my responsibility.
I put everything so much into it. But again, Tom will appreciate. I dove deep into the writing. Like I said, I want to be a good writer. And so I just started studying writers and how they wrote and reading everyone and the words that they used and the way they did it. But then I wanted to have my style, which, as you're reading, Sumit, it's the stories within the story. And then the character development. And wait till you see where this book goes. Like it took me 6 months to come up with the ending. So this is just slap some cool ideas in there and some weak characters. This one hits people cry. And it was, and man, and Tom will tell you, writing a book is arduous. And so I'm really proud of that one, which only came out a few weeks ago too. So.
Well, thank you once again. I know, Tom, you have a 10 o'clock. Martin, I know you are on to the next call as well. So thank you both for coming in. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the insight. Thank you for the wisdom. It's deeply, deeply appreciated.
No, my pleasure.
Right.
I'm proud of you, Martin. You're a legend, man. Good work.
Thanks, Tom.